Hello, I'm Marilla Sargent, Vice President and Branch Manager of the Montlake Terrace office of Home Street Bank. Home Street Bank is proud to sponsor these videos, which will help the voters make an informed choice in the November elections.
Welcome to Vote 2017. I'm Teresa Whipple, and we're here tonight with Adrienne Fraley-Monillas, who is running for Edmonds City Council Position 3. Welcome.
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate you inviting me down for a little talk.
You bet. And we're going to talk about a variety of city issues, but first, let's start with the easy question, which is tell us about yourself and why you're running for re-election.
Sure. Well, I've served on the City Council almost 8 years now. I was born and raised in the area. I was born in Richmond Beach, and I've lived within 5 miles of the house I was raised in my whole life. I live up on the other side of Highway 99, or I like to call it the other side of the tracks, near Lake Ballinger, as you do.
Yes.
I've lived there for, I was trying to think today, I think 33 years. So I've been very involved in Edmonds for a long time. I retired from the state of Washington in 2010 after a 33-year career there. Working for the Department of Social and Health Services, and I'm used to giving back to my community in various ways, so that's when I decided I would run for City Council.
Very good. And what, as somebody who's been on the City Council for a long time and been very familiar with the issues, what do you think are the top 3 issues facing Edmonds in the next few years?
Well, I think environmentally is a number of issues on the environmental front. I mean, we've all heard about the marsh and the issues around the marsh, but I think we also have to look at the sea level rise. I know that the council voted to increase the building heights by 2 feet on the waterfront, and from what I've read from NOAA and their reports, it looks like it's going to raise anywhere from 10 to 15 feet. So I think that's of grave concern, and it may be 50 years from now, it could be 25 years from now, but I think we need to plan for it into the future.
Okay.
I think that's a very, very important issue
Okay.
in Edmonds right now.
All right. Any others that you'd like to highlight?
Well, of course, the homelessness issue is increasing. We've seen it along the 99 corridor for a number of years, but it's now starting to spread out to the rest of Edmonds. And I think we need to deal with the homeless issue. We need to deal with housing, affordable housing, Section 8 housing, low-income housing, senior housing. You know, we're going to have to do it, and we might as well get it done now. And that's why I've been working on the planning of Highway 99.
Right, and that actually was going to be my next question.
Sure.
With Highway 99. Now that the planning is done and we're starting the next phase of planning, the initial planning, and now the kind of the plan for the big plan of actually building it.
Right.
There's so many plans. What is your vision, as somebody especially who lives in the area, your vision for what you'd like to see when it's completed and kind of what you're hoping it will do for the area?
Well, my vision of Highway 99 really has to do with, first off, cleaning it up a bit. It's a very uncomfortable place to be around most of the time. It's uncomfortable to walk on 99. It's almost impossible to get across the street on Highway 99 because of the distance between our crosswalks. It's not a very people-friendly sort of place. So I see us having more input, almost like Shoreline did in their development. And I'm not saying I want to copy Shoreline. I just think Shoreline did a really good job of cleaning up their whole Highway 99 by redevelopment. You know, it's a long-term plan. It took Shoreline 20 years, you know, to complete it, but we've got to start it now. I'd like to see a variety of housing up along the corridor and businesses. I want to make sure we protect our residential neighborhoods because, you know, as you and I both live up there, and we know we don't need to have, 20-story buildings right next to single-family residences. So I think ensuring that we are protecting those neighborhoods around there will give it some vitality. It'd be lovely to be able to walk along Highway 99 and go to different businesses. And, you know, because we have some fantastic restaurants on Highway 99. I'll put in a little plug for that while I'm here. You know, the International District is fabulous. They have some of the best food that you could possibly have anywhere in this area is along our corridor.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. And, you know, affordable housing, you mentioned this. You're going through all the things I've already got on my list.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. But let's talk a little bit more about that, too, because
yeah.
I know I've heard the discussions in council meetings about that and the fact that affordable housing, the definition is wide-ranging depending on what you're looking at in terms of income level. And so what do you see as the city's role in kind of working to ensure there's more of a range of housing available?
Well, I think the city's has a big role in this because we're the ones that are talking to the developers and the builders and trying to find ways of making it easier for them to build along that corridor. If we don't do that, it's going to continue to look like it does, which isn't a very welcoming place for anybody to be. So I think the city's got a whole lot of work to be done to encourage people to come in and develop along that corridor. Very much so.
Okay.
And I think we need a big variety of housing. I mean, it's really considered transit-oriented development along the 99 corridor because it is so, we have the Swift bus route. We're going to be connecting up to Sound Transit one of these days. We have very much, we're looking for younger sorts of folks to live along that corridor in some of the areas, and in some of the other areas perhaps senior housing or low-income housing. So we've also been talking to some of the churches and some of the landowners along the Highway 99 corridor to see if they would be interested in looking at perhaps low-income housing or senior housing or veterans housing or whatever the case may be. So I have great hope that we're going to be able to serve a different sort of population than what the downtown core serves. Definitely.
Yeah. And since I have you here and you do have that unique perspective of being in that neighborhood, I've heard some comments from people recently who live in on the other side of the tracks, as you refer to it, who feel a little frustrated sometimes that they're not maybe given the same level of attention or consideration as the rest of Edmonds, and I've heard you talk about this in council meetings too. Do you think that having a focus on Highway 99 through that development might change that? I had somebody say to me, "Why don't we get flower baskets?"
I think you're right. I think the International District was the start of that, to create more of a unique area for people to be in along the corridor. And you're right. I mean, and you have heard me talk about it. The lack of sidewalks, the lack of lighting. I mean, it's just sort of a different sort of response to the city. And I'm hoping at least that as we develop the corridor, that we're going to be able to improve the neighborhoods as we go. Baskets along Highway 99, not sure of that, but I think there can be a focus that's paid more attention. I've spoken to the chamber a little bit about the development of Highway 99 and encouraging business along that corridor and what can we do to meet with them and talk with them and try and encourage a different sort of environment.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So let's talk about, you mentioned the marsh at one point, I believe, and this is an issue that the council has been
grappling with
in recent years, yes, and so obviously you were in the thick of it with the discussion about the Shoreline Master Program, and that went on for quite some time, and now that's kind of done, and now the council's looking at a study to kind of see what the future holds too. But let's talk a little bit about kind of that process and what you think that study is going to, what will happen after that. I mean, what is the council hoping to learn from the baseline study that they're going to be doing, funding, hiring a consultant to do to kind of take a look at what should be done for the future of the marsh?
Well, I think it's fair on all arenas to talk a little bit, to bring in folks to look at a study, a baseline study. It'll be fair to the port, it should be fair to Burlington, Chevron, and us to take a look and see what is really deep into the marsh itself. Where are the areas that are more critical than others? What can we do? And I think it's more of a fair approach than just arbitrarily saying it's got a 125-foot buffer and so be it.
Right.
I think we need to look at each area individually and make some determinations for the health of the marsh. What do we really think is going to help improve besides daylighting Willow Creek, which we know is going to be a major factor, so those salmon are able to come up and down our creeks that feed into the marsh. So I'm really hoping that we're going to have a little bit more definite answer, I guess.
Okay.
For everybody concerned. It isn't just for the city. I mean, it's also
because there's
for
many, as you pointed out, there's many parties involved
absolutely,
in the marsh.
absolutely, many parties involved. And I know stormwater is a big issue that needs to be addressed, and how we go about addressing it. There's a couple of different ways you can address it. You can address it through redevelopment, but you can also address it through grants and various ways of bringing in some funds to actually do some of the stormwater cleanup through there.
Right.
You know, Edmonds, when Edmonds was incorporated, the vision was never that we were going to be this populous of a city. And I think that's one of the biggest problems is that we've built roads and we've blocked the marsh from having the natural clean out that it has in being a marsh, in an estuary.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And, talking about kind of a follow-up to that question, over the years I've observed, just in sitting through council meetings, that there's been a fair amount of tension between the port and the city on the marsh issue and other issues.
Sure.
They proposed some redevelopment in that Harbor
Sure.
Square business
Sure.
complex that the council chose not to move forward with.
Sure.
And do you think that's a fair assessment, that there's been tension? First, I don't want to make assumptions that
Sure.
my observation is correct. And second, if that's true, what do you think should happen to maybe make that working relationship better?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it tension.
Okay.
I would say differences.
Okay.
Nothing, in my opinion, nothing's preventing the port now from developing. We have nothing that prevents them from developing up to the heights that it's limited at the marsh, and I believe it's different in different areas of the marsh. But what the port tells us is that it's not enough of a return. They need higher, bigger, better. And I'm not sure that that's exactly what the citizens are interested in doing, would be changing the zoning in order to provide that level. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
I mean, I think I do want to work with the port, and I think the port is a very valuable port of Edmonds. I think that our relations haven't always been the best. And I think it's a contentious sort of thing because these plans, and it happens with a lot of different groups too, because people bring plans to us and we have to assess, if it's out of the zoning, the permissible zoning, we have to assess the value. What's the value to the citizens? What's the value to the city? What's the value to the environment before we move on these things? And sometimes people attribute that to not being for or being against something, but it's not necessarily that way. I don't blame the port. I mean, I think the port is doing what they're charged to do.
Right. Well, and some people have said that's kind of that there would be some natural conflict there just because you have different missions. What the city's focus is and the port's focus are different.
Absolutely. And I don't begrudge the port at all. I mean, the port's doing what they are designated to do, and we're doing what we're designated to do. And,
Right.
hopefully we'll be able to come together at some point and be able to move forward.
Okay, good. Well, the next question I have, completely shifting gears, but
Sure.
this is a topic that you guys dealt with for quite some time through many meetings, and that's crumb rubber. And yes, and of course, just brief
Bouncing back again.
Yes, we did say that joke. But the truth is that there were a lot of citizens who came to your meetings and talked about the worries about the crumb rubber ground up tires, being used as infill for play fields. And of course, you guys have a ban now that expires in February. Whether unless you decide to extend it again. But the truth is that the school district is going to probably be dealing with it. You're going to be dealing with it. How are you feeling about that right now in terms of, is the jury still out on the research? What are you thinking?
Well, that's a very accurate statement. We don't have all the information yet. We're waiting. We continue to wait for the EPA to come up with what they believe the facts to be based on their research and studies, and we don't have the facts yet. And I personally don't want to put anybody in any level of jeopardy until we have a better understanding. I would not allow my son to play on crumb rubber because I just don't know yet. And I think it's safe for us to do within the city at this point. I'll be interested to see what the EPA decides. And, if the EPA comes back and says, oh, it's perfectly fine, it doesn't cause cancer, whatever the case may be, we're going to have to listen to what they say. But now I heard, was it yesterday, I was reading an article about cork. And there's some discussion now about cork and the health of cork that they're putting into play fields in Seattle somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't remember where.
Okay.
So I think,
Yeah,
All we can do is depend on the specialist to tell us what they believe to be the accurate information, and then we make a decision from there. I can tell you as a parent, it's not something until I have better feelings I want my son to play on.
Right.
You know, and there are lots of parents that do allow their kids to play on it, and I don't begrudge them. Each parent has to make a decision for themselves
Yeah.
when it comes to the playing fields that their kids are playing on.
Yeah, okay, okay.
You bet.
Very good. Well, we are at a point where you may address the voters directly and tell them why they should vote for you, so
Great,
your
thank you.
turn.
Well, I'd like to see the Edmonds voters vote for me. I have a couple of projects that I'm not quite done with. One of them is the opioid crisis. I serve as the Snohomish County Chair of the Public Health District. And one of the issues that we're fighting and working on is the drug crisis that's taken over our county. And I find that very important. It's a very important piece of my work because it just doesn't help the citizens of Edmonds, but it also helps the county. And I think that's a very, very important piece of what we're doing. I also want to see Highway 99 finished off. That's a work in progress, and I think my experience, I've been working probably the last 6 years, maybe even 7 years on the Highway 99 development, and I want to see that finished because I think that's a very important piece to our city. It's an important piece for housing. It's an important piece to handle the GMA growth is going to be in the Highway 99 corridor. So those are some of the reasons why I hope the Edmonds citizens take that opportunity to vote for Adrienne.
Okay, well, Adrienne, thank you so much for coming in.
Anytime,
It was great
Teresa.
to see you.
Good to
and
see you too.
Best of luck in November.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.